Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam and my aim is to get you a little bit better at English every single time you watch one of my videos. So today we're going to be continuing our Macbeth series and we're going to be looking at Act 1, Scene 2. In this scene, we're going to be looking at the way that the captain, or in some translations he's called the sergeant, speaks about Macbeth, how Macbeth is initially sort of presented to the Jacobean audience that would be watching this, and obviously us as a modern audience. We'll be breaking down a bunch of the language and structure that we see in the scene. And I highly recommend that you have either a sheet of paper or notes on your phone, or what would be amazing would be an actual copy of Macbeth so that you can highlight along with me some of my ideas, okay? I've been doing this for over a decade, nearly 15 years actually, helped thousands of students go through Shakespeare texts. Macbeth is probably my #1 Shakespeare text. I personally have read it over 500 times. I will probably put that in every video because I feel like that is both very tragic, but also kind of a flex if you're an English teacher, right? So let's dive straight in. And we'll start talking about Act 1, Scene 2. Now, if you haven't already watched a video or audiobook or read this scene, then I highly recommend you read it first. I'm going to have audiobooks out if this isn't already, if you haven't already got an audiobook option on my channel yet, it's coming soon, but make sure that you have read the scene before you take the notes with me, because you're not going to understand it otherwise, okay? So, Duncan is the king. And the first thing that he says is, "What bloody man is that? What bloody man is that?" And so we immediately see that whoever Duncan is looking at is covered in blood, and that establishes the fact Scotland is at war right now, okay? So Scotland is at war and his men are dying in the fields as we speak, okay? Scotland is at war, okay? So we know that the captain has been wounded because he comes in and he's the one that Duncan was speaking about. Malcolm is Duncan's son. He is the oldest son of Duncan, which means that he has what's called the right of primogeniture, which is just a fancy way of saying that if Duncan died or anything happened to him, Malcolm would have the right to become the next king, okay? And Malcolm says, "Oh, this is the sergeant who fought against my captivity." So what that means is this captain or this sergeant that has been wounded and is bleeding profusely right now in front of the king, one of the reasons he got these wounds is because he was saving the prince, the future of Scotland, from being captured by the enemies of Scotland. Okay, so straight away, the fact that he was helping the prince and risking his life shows that he was a very trustworthy guy. And therefore, everything that the captain says, King Duncan is going to trust. Because, you know, if someone saves one of your family members, you're probably going to be pretty grateful to that person, right? So the captain starts speaking and he has these awesome monologues describing the battle. So he starts with the simile of the idea that the battle was almost like two spent swimmers that cling together. So the simile is showing that these men that have been out there fighting for hours are knackered. Basically, they're really, really tired. They're so tired, it's almost like two swimmers that are kind of floating in the sea and they're like, they barely have the energy to stay afloat. So they're kind of clinging together and hugging together to just try and stay above the water. But it also shows how close the soldiers are getting on the battlefield. And he then introduces the villain, the one that has been fighting against Scotland, who is here known as Merciless MacDonald. Merciless MacDonald, okay? So Merciless MacDonald, the alliteration of Merciless MacDonald also emphasizes that name. He is the one that has created this army. And we find out that the army is made up of kerns and gallows glasses. Now, kerns and gallows glasses, these aren't words that we would use today, obviously, but they are basically words for what are known as mercenary fighters. And mercenary fighters are something that technically still exists today. They're people that fight because they're being paid to fight. They're not fighting for their king, they're not fighting for their country, they're not fighting for a cause, they're literally just fighting for money, okay? So that straight away tells us that Merciless MacDonald can't be that popular if he's had to pay for an army to fight for him. It's not like some of the famous heroes and leaders of history where big armies form behind them and they fight for what they believe in, right? Fight against oppression, fight against something that's not right, whatever. Duncan is actually a really great king for Scotland. So he's had to pay people just to try and fight against Duncan to take over Scotland, okay? And it fails terribly. Brave Macbeth is right there on the scene. And I want you to understand that this is the first description of Macbeth. So the first description in this case is brave. And that then forms what's called an epithet. And an epithet is basically just a fancy word for your first impression or what you associate with the person. So when we think Macbeth right now, we think brave. That's his epithet at the beginning of the play, okay? And the reason that's important is because obviously this whole play is a tragedy, and the whole point of the play is that Macbeth is not going to be a hero, okay? So right now he's a hero, and that elevates him up high, which only makes his fall into corruption and evil worse and more tragic. But right now he's a hero, he's crushing it. His brandished steel, which is his sword, is said to have smoked with bloody execution. This is imagery, it's obviously hyperbole because his sword isn't literally smoking, but it's establishing him as a legend. It's this idea that he is fighting so bravely, killing so many of the enemy that it's almost as if his sword is on fire or smoking, right? And then he is the one, Macbeth is the one that actually kills the merciless MacDonald, because it says that Macbeth unseamed him from the nave to the chops. Now your nave is your navel, which is your belly button, basically around your sort of belly button area, and your chops, obviously, like some people would say, I guess your cheeks, but kind of in your face, yeah. So Macbeth gets his sword and shoves it into MacDonald's stomach and literally cuts him in half all the way up to his face, right? And then he takes the head of MacDonald and sticks it on a battlement, which is kind of their fortress or where their men were before the battle started, something like that. Okay, so this is really important because it shows Macbeth as a hero, yes, but also it's incredibly brutal and gory, right? He doesn't just kill MacDonald, he like really destroys him. He could have just stabbed him and killed him and that's it, right? But he goes the extra gory, brutal mile, cutting him in half, cutting his head off, yeah? So this could be seen as a little bit of foreboding or foreshadowing of Macbeth's vicious, violent, aggressive, brutal, gory nature, which comes out later in the play as Macbeth starts to take over. Anyway, so after MacDonald has been cut in half and his head's been stuck on a pike on the battlements, as you might imagine, the Kerns, the paid mercenary fighters, they take to their heels, which means they run away, okay? So this imagery of them running away is kind of obvious because imagine you've been paid to fight in a battle and then the boss who paid you dies, right? You've either already been paid, in which case, why would you continue to risk your life once the boss is dead? You're not on a performance review, right? You just leave and save your life. Or if you're stupid and you fought before getting paid, the boss is dead now. You're not going to get paid. So again, you run away and you save your life, right? These men that were hired to fight in MacDonald's army weren't fighting with any passion. They were just fighting for money, so they run away, okay? And you'd think that would be a pretty big day out for Macbeth already, the fact that he has already had to defeat one army of traitors. But no, as if that wasn't enough, there's a second army that have been waiting on the sidelines, the Norwegian army, right? And the Norwegians, when they see that MacDonald's army has failed and they're running away, they see an advantage, and so they send in their men, new supplies of men, and a fresh assault. So imagine that you have just played an entire match of football or tennis or rugby or cricket or whatever your sport is, or maybe you're not a sport person, or you've done something physically exhausting, right? Imagine if you finish that and then you're told you have to do it again, right? You'd be pretty tired, and that would be a disadvantage compared to someone who joined you at that point with fresh legs, so to speak, yeah, like haven't exercised yet that day. That's the situation here between the Scottish army that's already fought a battle and the Norwegian army who haven't fought anything yet, okay? So they have an unfair advantage. Yet despite this, when Duncan gets worried and says, well, didn't this dismay Macbeth and Banquo? The captain replies in a very sarcastic, humorous way. He says, yeah, the new army worried them about as much as an eagle is affected by a sparrow. Eagle obviously is a massive bird, a sparrow is a tiny little bird, or how much a lion would be bothered if a hare skipped by, yeah? So these are juxtapositions, obviously, and the juxtaposition here is meant to show that Macbeth and Banquo, to borrow from gaming terminology, are OP. They're overpowered, they cannot be defeated, and so in the same way that, you know, if a lion, even if a lion is tired, it's still going to absolutely destroy a hare or a rabbit, right? That's the situation here. So Macbeth and Banquo go back at it. They were almost like cannons overcharged with double cracks and doubly redoubled their strokes. Now this is a simile, the idea that the cannon, they're like cannons and they're literally like filled with gunpowder, shooting out everywhere, destroying their enemy all over the place. But the other thing I want you to see is the repetition of the word double, yeah? Double, doubly doubled. Double, doubly redoubled, right? Now one of the most famous quotes in the whole play from the witches is double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, right? And several times in the play, Macbeth is referred to with doubles, Lady Macbeth is referred to with doubles, and obviously the witches use doubles, right? So this is foreshadowing or creating a parallelism between the Macbeths, well, in this case, Macbeth, not his wife yet, and the witches, the supernatural. So it forebodes or foreshadows that there might be an evil kind of overlap or connection there. Shakespeare was really clever. Okay, so then we just have a couple more quotes to go through on the final page of this. So later on, a report comes back that from Ross that Scotland has won, has defeated the Norwegian army. The Norwegian army now is going to have to pay Duncan 10,000, which is an unfathomable amount of money in today's money. Imagine this is like 10th century, 11th century. You know, we're talking millions, basically, millions and millions. So Macbeth has not only made millions for Scotland and for King Duncan as head of Scotland, right? He's defeated a second army. He is absolutely the hero of Scotland right now. And Ross describes Macbeth as Bellona's bridegroom. Yeah. So it's actually Macbeth that also captured this disloyal traitor called the Thane of Cawdor. Now, those of you that have read the play before, you know that the Thane of Cawdor becomes executed, or gets executed, right? And once the original Thane of Cawdor is executed, Macbeth is promoted and given the title as the new Thane of Cawdor. But anyway, Bellona was the goddess of war, and this is really clever, I think. So Shakespeare has made it that Macbeth is the husband of the goddess of war. That's weird, right? If Macbeth was the one on the battlefield, you would expect them to describe him as just a god of war, but they don't. Shakespeare says that Macbeth was like the husband of the goddess of war. And the reason that's important is because it suggests that Lady Macbeth is going to be an even more powerful warrior, a goddess, right? And Macbeth is married to the goddess, and therefore is going to kind of go along with what the goddess says. Okay. And again, for those of you that have read the play, that's exactly what happens. Macbeth actually is kind of not wanting to commit the regicide and kill King Duncan later. It is only because of the witches persuading him, and even more so his wife pushing him and persuading him and convincing him that he does it. So that is an absolutely, amazing quote for you to remember. And it's only 2 words. If you want to go even deeper on it, because there's always extra layers, you've also got plosive B sounds, which adds to the sense of the aggression on the battlefield. Bellona's bridegroom. Okay. I'm on fire today. I feel like this is a lot of really good information. I'm sure that pretty much no one has quite this detailed level of notes. If you are enjoying this video, or even if you're not enjoying it, even if you're bored, but you're like, actually, there's a lot of good stuff in here, give us a subscribe, give us a thumbs up, share this with someone else that might benefit, that maybe is struggling with Macbeth. Okay. So then the scene finishes with one other really important thing, which is the fact that Duncan, now knowing that the Thane of Cawdor is a traitor, says, go pronounce his present death, and with his former title greet Macbeth. Ross says, I'll see it done, and Duncan says, what he hath lost, noble Macbeth hath won. So we've got 2 rhyming couplets there. Death, Macbeth, done, won. Shakespeare really wanted the audience to notice the rhyming there. The rhyming reminds us, going back to Act 1, Scene 1, about the witches, because the witches speak in rhythm and rhyme, right? But on top of that, it creates a sense of rhyme being linked to death or destruction, okay? So the rhyme here is Duncan saying, go kill the Thane of Cawdor, he's a traitor. And several times throughout the play, there's a rhyming couplet to foreshadow the fact that a character's about to die, including Macbeth uses a rhyming couplet just before he goes in to kill King Duncan. Okay, so that is, in a nutshell, everything I want to say about Act 1, Scene 2. I'm just going to give a quick... Last time I told you that there are these tables of all the quotes that I can make available to you with some of my content. There's information about that in the description if you've enjoyed this video. But in a nutshell, I can copy and paste quotes into this table. And what we're trying to do with all of our notes is we want to know which character spoke the quote, explain why the quote's important, the location, in this case it would be Act 1, Scene 2. We have the quote there that I can normally copy and paste. I don't know why it's not letting me. We want a bit of context, and there's context for all of the quotes that I've described today. I might briefly go through that before I end the video. We want the techniques and definitions for the quotes. I think I've given you a lot of that today in this video. So you're mapping everything out and creating this master guide for yourself for your revision, because come the exam time, you need to have quite a few of these quotes memorized, and you need to be really agile with these quotes. So if you have something like this that builds everything out for you, it's going to be a lot easier when you get to that exam session. So yeah, bonus for those of you that are still with me, let me just quickly go through and think about where I could add a bit more context for you, because I don't actually think that I gave you that much context in today's lesson. So we talked about the right of primogeniture that Malcolm has. That's an important one. A lot of students aren't taught about the right of primogeniture. We talked about kerns and gallows glasses and how, especially back then, there were mercenary soldiers that traitors could pay to have an army to fight against their king, their country, whatever. I think you could argue that an interesting bit of context is back in the sort of 10th century, 9th century, 10th century, around that time. There was a lot of turbulence between Scotland and Nordic countries like Norway. A lot of battles happened between, at that time, known as the Vikings, right? Against Scotland and back and forth. So this is kind of at least sort of semi-historical. You could mention that, and the Jacobeans would have been like loosely aware of that. I think that the fact I didn't talk to you about what a thane was, so I guess I could quickly explain that. I did also talk about the goddess of war, actually, which is context. So, you know, you can look up Bellona and who she mythologically was meant to be and whatever. But actually, yeah, just what a thane is, nice and simple. A thane is very similar to like a lord in England. So, you know, you've got the king, queen, princes, lords, ladies, all those titles of the like high society, so to speak. A thane is a Scottish version of that high society. Kind of the most important people in Scotland, the most powerful, the ones that were closest to the monarchy, kings, queens, princes, princesses, etc. Okay. Yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, guys, if you enjoyed that, please do like, share, subscribe. It really helps. If you want more of my content, I've got, you know, a whole community that I'm building out, and I'd love to see more of you. And hopefully this has helped you get to a better understanding of Act 1, Scene 2. I'll see you in the next one. All right. Thank you very much.